when I saw what happened in 2021, for me, as it did for you and for millions of Americans and probably billions of people across the globe, it really shook us to our core. We're about to lose this thing. And I remember hearing a lot of people say, well, this is not America. This is not who we are. This is crazy. But as crazy as it might be, it is, in fact, part of who we are. And again, in doing the research for this book, we've got to try. I looked at these series of what were called at the time election outrages that were taking place across the state of Texas. You would have, for example, in Fort Bend County, which in the 1870s was the first county in America to elect an African American to be sheriff of Fort Bend County. More than half of the office holders were African American, not just in the 1870s during Reconstruction, but well into the 1880s following Reconstruction. White nationalist terrorists tried to stop the peaceful transfer of power. You had open pitched battles in the county seat of Fort Bend County. And unfortunately, those were ultimately decided in the favor of these white nationalist terrorists with the power of then sitting Governor Sol Ross in Texas. And it enshrined another white primary into law. It was called the Jaybird primary in Fort Bend that actually wasn't struck down by the Supreme Court until the 1950s. In Washington County, you had another outrage. I believe it was in 1886, where masked gunmen, again, white nationalist terrorists, literally went into the polling places and stole the ballot boxes from poll workers. They did it at one polling location after another until at the final polling location, they're actually stopped by the poll workers. There's a scuffle. And in the ensuing violence, one of the ballot robbers is killed. The only people arrested are, in fact, the poll workers who happen to be African American. 3 of them are pulled out of the county jail before trial and are lynched because they have incriminating evidence on the ringleaders who have been leading this ballot theft plot. The story makes it all the way up to the House of Representatives. There is legislation introduced to provide protection by the federal government for voting by all Americans, including those who live in the former Confederacy. In 1890, this bill passes the House of Representatives. It has the support of the majority party, the Democrats in the Senate, the Republicans in the Senate, and the Republican president, President Harrison. But it dies on the horns of a filibuster in 1890, and it will be 75 years of Jim Crow before we get another chance in 1965 with LBJ, again inspired by Dr. Lawrence Nixon. So that violent attempt to stop the peaceful transfer of power, to interrupt the free and fair, nonviolent, peaceful election of those who will represent us, and the ability to decide the course and the direction that your community, your state, your country will take. We have a history of that happening in America. It is resurgent right now, not just January 6, 2021, but it rolls through various state legislatures that continue to make it harder for people to vote, with the specter of voter fraud and the idea that, for example, illegal immigrants by the millions are going to steal elections, though that is literally impossible. There's no evidence of that happening. And in Texas, at least, you are more likely to be struck by lightning than you are to encounter a case of verified voter fraud. So yes, Megan, I see these patterns recurring through our history. It's important that we recognize them so that when we see them, we are motivated to act. And this is super important, and so that we know that not only can we overcome these challenges like the ones we have before us right now, but we've overcome them before against much longer odds, much greater obstacles. So we have it within us to overcome those things that are also within us that might stop this beautiful democracy that really is not just so wonderful for this country, but means so much to so many around the world.